Hey everyone, welcome back to Bible 365 with Kathy Carter. And my elephant in the room is my new glasses, because this is the year of new reading glasses for me. And so my first question is are they crazy old lady? Which is possible. Are they too matchy? Also possible. Or like, am I hitting it dead on? I feel like I'm hitting it dead on. And like, this is one of the very few things that I can actually wear them with because they are so outrageous. Anyway, I'm trying them today. I may love them, wear them every single episode from here on out. You may never see them again. We'll see. All right. So, Bible 365 is the name of the show. It means that we are reading through the Bible in 365 days. So, 1 year to read through the entire Bible. I am using the 1 year chronological Bible reading plan, which you can find online at the 1 year chronological Bible online.com. So, if you would just look that up, I've tried to post a link, but it gives me a hard time. So, if you want to look that up and then just download the chronological reading plan, they have all different kinds of reading plans. So just be careful. You're downloading the chronological reading plan starting, it obviously is January 1st to December 31st. You can jump in at any time. There are no rules and regulations that say you have to jump in on January 1st or you can't do it again until the next year. You can jump in any day you want. You can slow it down if you want, but just remember that I do a video every single day. So you're going to see these videos pop up every single day. But if you take 2 or 3 days to read it, then, then just take your time and the videos will still be there and you can listen to them at another time. So today we are in the book of Numbers. And so today is day 59 and we are in Numbers 4 and 5. So chapters 4 and 5. And it still feels a lot like Leviticus. And so background, if today is the first day and you have never been with me before, this is the first time you're hearing this, because we are in the book of Numbers, it's going to be a very confusing jumping off point. If you still want to listen, I always love having you guys sit in here and listen. But if you want to have it make a little bit more sense, or if you have never been through the Bible before, so you're not really familiar even with what Numbers means, why it would be called Numbers, then I would love if you went back actually to the book of Exodus. And then you would go from Exodus to Deuteronomy, and then into the book of Numbers. Best case scenario is always going back to day 1, to Genesis 1, because that's the foundation and that slowly builds. We're building a house, right? So we're sort of building the story of God inside this reading. And so by the end, I am hoping that you have this great understanding of God, which draws you into love God because you recognize who he is, what he has done, how he has created us, and how we are his children. And therefore you have a desire to follow him. So that's really my ultimate goal. Not that you can't get there without reading the Bible, but I feel like a deep dive into reading what God actually says is the best way to get there, and the best way to get there with the most amount of truth under your belt, whether you understand it right now or not, because it does take time, it takes patience, right? It takes prayer. So it takes all of those things, allowing God to, asking him just that you are interested in him and that you want to know more about him, and to ask him just to open up your eyes to the reading, especially when they're challenging readings. And these last, probably 2 weeks where we were in the last edge of Exodus into Leviticus and into the beginning of Numbers, it's a tougher read. It's a little more monotonous, a little more about rules and regulations, and a little less about stories like Genesis was. And so I just ask maybe again if you would go back and read, but if not, feel free to jump right in and hear what I have to say today and see how you feel about it. So the little bit of background that I'm giving you is from Moses. So we are now in this area where they have developed essentially a town at the base of Mount Sinai. So the Israelites have been saved out of slavery. They have been saved out of Egypt by God through Moses, through doing miracles. And now they are brought to the base of Mount Sinai. They have set up an entire camp with all of their people, each one. And as we went through yesterday, each one has a place that they need to live. They have a little setup where they are. They have their banner. They have their area. So some are on the east, some are on the north, right? So the tabernacle is the center. And then the Levites are around the center of the tabernacle. And then around all of them are all of the rest of the Israelites. So we have each tribe, every tribe is one of the 12 sons of Jacob, remembering back in the book of Genesis. except for two tribes. So Joseph is not a tribe, who's a son of Jacob, but his two sons are Manasseh and Ephraim. And so, anyway, they make up all the 12 tribes. And so, what we've seen so far is how it looks like set up, and then who gets to carry everything and move it on, right? So, how they sort of move from one place to the other. And if there's a question on what that is, if you remember maybe a week and a half ago at this point, every time God tells them to move, they're supposed to move. So what they're trying to do right now, they're at the base of Mount Sinai. And what they're trying to do is they are working towards the land of Canaan. So they're working towards what we call the promised land, because God promised this land to Abraham many, many, many generations ago, like 500 years ago. This land was promised to Abraham, probably more than that, maybe 600 or 700 years ago. It was promised to Abraham, and God said, I'm going to give you this land that you're on right now, and I'm going to give it to all of your descendants, and your descendants are going to be like the sand. There's going to be so many of them, right? So now we're sort of in that area where there's over 1 million Israelites right now living in this area, and then God is going to pick them up, and he's going to slowly but surely move the entire clan to the land of Canaan, and they are going to live and dwell in there. That is God's land, and it is the land that he has promised them. And right now, they are just in a system where God is saying, I want my people to be holy so they can dwell with me, who is a holy God. That's where we are. I hope it was a synopsis that helps. I try to do one every single day. And a lot of it is because maybe some people are watching it for the first time, but also it's a reminder every day. So if you didn't quite understand it yesterday, we've sort of taken an extra step today, and then maybe you can understand it a little bit more. And then tomorrow, when we take another step, there'll be another little bit in there, right? So I'm hoping to develop this storyline and this pattern for you to help you understand. Okay, so today we are in Numbers 4 and 5. So we went from understanding their lineup essentially, and then today we're going to move on a little bit. So in Numbers 4, this is the duties of the Kohathite clan. So Levi was one of the sons of Jacob from long, long ago. Levi had 3 sons, Gershon, Merari, and Kohath. And they were his 3 sons. And these 3 sons, not necessarily that they have a tribe, but they have a lineage, right? So they have people underneath of them. And then remember, they died several hundred years ago. So this is the generations following them. So in Egypt, they had to keep records and know who was who, right? Who was of what clan, who was of what tribe. So now they're all living in this area, and they're sort of, once again, in some ways, they're all a collective unit of Israelite people, but they're also sort of semi-separated into tribes. Not that one is better than the other, but everybody has a job and a purpose. So God has said, every single one of you has a purpose in being my people. All right. And so the Kohathites, who are a tribe of the Levites are all in charge of the house of God, the tabernacle, or the tent of meetings. They are all sort of synonymous expressions. And so the Levites are in charge of that. And the Kohathites are one group out of 3 of the Levites, right? Because they're 3 sons, one group out of 3. Okay. So a little bit of a base and a foundation of who they are. And so these are what they're going to do. They are going to be the ones that carry when the tribes all move, right? So everybody packs up. God's fire kind of comes up and out of the tabernacle, and they see it and they go, okay, it's time to move. Everybody pack up all your stuff. And so the Israelites as a team, they all pack all of their stuff. And then the Levites, Moses and Aaron's sons, are in charge of packing up the entire tabernacle, picking everything up and moving everything on. And so this is a little bit of a detailed instruction. And I'm kind of fascinated by this because this stuff, all these little intricate details fascinate me. And so this is what they're going to do with everything in there. So if we sort of remember everything that was built way back during Exodus under the guidelines of Moses. So he's going to take a census of the Kohathites. So he's asked to take, how many people are there, right? So how many people are in this tribe? And it's men from 30 to 60 that are counted. And these are the men, the reason that these are the men that are counted is because these are the men that are going to be doing all the lifting. These are the men that are going to be picking everything up and moving everything on. The others are, no one else in the tribe of the Kohathites are going to be doing that. So only these men. So they're the ones that are counted. All right. So in verse 4, it says they're the ones that are to carry the holy things. So if I read verse 4, it says, this is the work of the Kohathites at the tent of meeting, the care of the most holy things. When the camp is to move, Aaron and his sons are to go in and take down the shielding curtain and put it over the Ark of the Covenant. So I'm not going to give you too many, I'm not going to overread that too much, but just a little bit of detail. Everything had its place. And so the Ark was covered. So remember that the Ark is where God comes in between those two cherubim and God comes down to speak. No one is allowed in that. So Aaron and his sons are actually the ones that are. So it says, when the camp moves, the camp is to move, Aaron and his sons are to go in. So this is only the job of Aaron and his sons. Nobody else is allowed to do this. This is holy, unique, special, right? This is set apart. So only certain people are allowed to have these jobs, and only at certain times. And so God has made it just so detailed in the things that he wants from these people. So Aaron and his sons are to go in. They're going to take the ark. They're going to put a covering over it. And then over top of that, they're going to put another cloth over it. And then over top of that, they're going to cover it in leather. So you see that this is very taken care of and provided for. And then they're going to have poles and everything in that. And then they're sort of doing this in each thing. So that's done. And then the altar is the same. The altar is covered. And then all the plates and everything are stacked up on top of it. And then all of that is covered. And then again, covered with leather. So we have all these extra bindings. The lamp is the same, coverings on top of everything. And so when Aaron and his sons pack every individual piece up, then the Kohathites are allowed to pick everything up and move everything on. So they have they have the duty of carrying all the holy things, but not packing up all of the holy things. So their job is mostly to carry. So I want to go and read verse 15. And in verse 15, it says, Eleazar, so this is who's in charge. Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, is to have charge of the oil for the light, the fragrant incense, the regular grain offering, and the anointing oil. He is to be in charge of the entire tabernacle and everything in it, including its holy furnishings and articles. So essentially, he's the boss of this particular sect of people, and he is in charge of those special things that go in with the Lord. And I even thought it was interesting that the presence, which is the bread, the presence actually gets packed away and put in with the altar, the table. The presence gets packed away on top of that. So that, if you guys remember, the bread is the presence of the Lord. So even that, like, nothing gets left out. Nothing doesn't have its place. And then once everything, Eleazar is in charge of all that. And then again, they pack up everything and then they move on. It says in verse 20, they must not go in to look at the holy things, even for a moment, or they will die. So they have no privilege to go look at any of those holy things. If they do that, they will die. And I'm saying that with a smile on my face, not because I think that that's exciting, but because this word that I've been saying over and over and over again, it shows the holiness of God, how important he is. There is only a couple people that he picked that are able to come in and speak to him. And again, the miracle, this is a miracle, but then the miracle that comes with us when that is no longer true, and I can just sit at the Lord's feet through the Holy Spirit that is inside of me and talk to him, is the most amazing. Like, I take advantage of that, instead of recognizing that what they had to go through, right? And what they could and could not do. And then the abilities that I have, I know no better. But by reading this, I can learn that there was something uniquely different way back then. And now there's a privilege that I have that they did not have. And so that's why I sort of smile my way through it. It's not like a nervous laughter. All right. So moving on to the Gershonites. The Gershonites are in charge, and we sort of talked about this a little bit. Ithamar, the other brother, is the other son of Aaron, which is the brother of Eleazar. He is in charge of the Gershonites and the Merarites, and they are the ones that are to pack up sort of everything else. So the Gershonites pack up like the curtains and the poles and things like that. And then the Merarites, they pack up like the bases, the base structures, and just all things sort of like that, like put everything together. And so they pack up all of those things, and they pick up and move everything. And now again, when they're allowed to pick it up is after all the Israelites have all packed up, after Moses, Aaron, and the sons have all packed up everything. Then And only then can the three clans of the Levites pick up stuff and move on. So they have a certain time and a place where they can do that. All right. All the Levites numbered 8,580 from the ages of 30 to 60. So the workable ones, the ones that are working, the ones that are doing the job in the temple, they are, like I said, 8,580. All right. I want to move on. I want to move on to the next chapter in Numbers, which is Numbers 5. This one's a little bit more brutal, a little bit tough. So it says, the Lord said to Moses, command the Israelites to send away from the camp anyone who has a defiling skin disease or a discharge of any kind, or who is ceremonially unclean because of a dead body. So he's stating, so remember, we have this camp established. And so anyone that has these things has to be sent out of the camp for a time. So they're not necessarily always, remember, some ceremonially unclean. It might only be for 7 days and then they come back, right? Or maybe 7 days more and then they come back after that. So they're not necessarily out all the time. Even the skin disease is the same way. So, but they are sent out so they don't infect anyone else. Could seem really obvious, right? So they're not contagious, right? So we could certainly take that and say that would make sense. But again, it's clean versus unclean, right? So the unclean is picked up and taken outside of God's base of people. So he has them set up in a camp, right? In a structure that looks a certain way, right? And then this is his, essentially, he's dwelling inside this holy dwelling area of his people. And so the unclean needs to be picked up and taken out of that until they are clean enough to come back and be inside that camping area again. So it's a small time they're away, but they do have a place where they go and they're away and then they can come back in. All right. So verse 5 says, the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, any man or woman who wrongs another in any way and so is unfaithful to the Lord is guilty. So they're guilty. They must confess their sin. So this is really important for me right now. I'm going through a time of Lent. And so this is, for me, this is the Lenten season this time of year. And I'm going through a time of Lent and I'm trying to keep with the vow that I made. And going through Leviticus at this time actually is really spectacular for me because it's given me a much greater understanding of what they were not able to have. And so I'm having a slightly easier time giving up the things that I want because I recognize they had to give up so much more than me. Like it's sort of the very least I can do. But it also helps me, like the way they get to come back and be in his presence is a little bit convicting to me as well. So this is how they get to come back in his presence. If they wrong one another, they need to confess their sins. They need to make full restitution. And I know I've talked about this already because we've had this before. And then they have to pay back 1/5 more to the person. So let's go with something simple, like they stole money, or they stole a cow. So they have to have that cow. They have to, if they stole it, let's say they stole it and they ate it. I don't know, whatever. They have to pay for that cow, right? So they have to make full restitution to the person. They have to confess it to the person, to the priest. They have to pay back 1/5 of what that cow costs. So they have to pay back the cow plus 1/5. So why would you steal in the first place? Because now you owe even more. And then on top of that, if they don't, not necessarily on top of, but if there's no family member to pay that back to, let's just say the family member was lost. If there's no family member to pay that back to make restitution for, then you would go to the next family member in line. And if that family member wasn't in line, then you pay all of that to the Lord. So it's not even as if you did somebody wrong and they're no longer around to take restitution. So no big deal. You get off scot-free. That's not what he says at all. If you can't find somebody, then you must make restitution to the Lord. So you must offer those finances or animals or whatever it might be. You have to offer that up into the temple, into the tent of meeting, temple, tabernacle. So it's payback, which I can definitely appreciate. And then he says here, all sacred contributions to the Israelites, all the sacred contributions the Israelites bring to a priest will belong to him. Sacred things belong to their owners, but what they give to the priest will belong to the priest. And so when they give it, it will be sacred and it will belong to the priest from here on out. All right. And then after this, we go into this section about marriage. I'm going to give you my issue with this section is not that it is about marriage. That's lovely and beautiful. My issue is it's only for the woman. Although earlier he does talk about adulterous men, but this one, it seems that it's only focusing on the adultery of the woman, but I'm not. This is what God says. This is what I hear. And so we just have to move forward with what it is. All right. So in verse 11, then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man's wife goes astray and is unfaithful to him, so that another man has had sexual relations with her, and this is hidden from her husband, and her impurity is undetected. So in other words, she has an affair, but like nobody knows, right? So at this point, no one can tell, no one knows. She's had it. She knows. Obviously, the person who has had it with her knows, but it has been undetected. But since there's no witness against her, but if feelings of jealousy come over her husband and he suspects her and he suspects that she is impure, or if he's jealous, so even if he's just a jealous guy and suspects her even though she's not impure, then he's to take his wife to the priest. So he could be a guy that legitimately is jealous and has some issues, and he's questioning whether she is or has or has not stepped outside of the marriage. He brings her to the priest. He could just be a guy that is very jealous or is very suspicious. Unfortunately, he can also bring her to the priest, although I'm going to say there's protection for her if he is just a jealous man. So God does offer her protection if he's just a jealous man. So what happens is they bring her to the priest. The priest has holy water and he puts some earth from the tabernacle in there. So it says some dust from the tabernacle inside that holy water. And I'm assuming because of that, it's maybe sacred and holy because it's from the tabernacle, which is a holy place. And then they ask her about it. And then they make her drink the water. If she has been unfaithful, then she will be cursed. It is a cursed water. And the cursed water will prevent her from childbearing, from having kids. And so this, obviously, we don't necessarily see that as much at this time in this country. There it is in other countries, so I don't want to take that away. In this country, we don't see that as much. Let me take that back. When women cannot have children and they want to have children, I'm sure it is awful and devastating. So I take it back that it is not a horrible thing. However, we are not, as a female society where in the United States, we are not judged based on whether we can or cannot have babies. So there's not a judgment based on that from outside in general. I'm sure a couple people base us on that, but as a general rule, you are not based on whether you can or cannot reproduce children, right? We now have stock in so many other things, right? Like we are looked at much better now, and not even much better. We're looked at differently, right? So there are different things that people find for our worth. That wasn't true then. So it was very important that women be childbearing, right? So and especially remember, people of God, it was very be fruitful and multiply. And so there was always that sense of the importance of being able to have children. Remember back in Genesis when some of the women couldn't have children. We didn't really see it so much with Rebecca, although she was very, very sad. Remember, and Isaac prayed for her, but we definitely saw it with Sarah. Sarah was really broken up about not being able to have children to the point where she took her handmaiden, her maid, and had Abraham have sex with her so she would have kids. And if you remember when the two sisters, Rachel and Leah, also had their nurses, handmaidens, have children for them, right? Because it was all about having children. There was importance. You were an important wife if you had children. So I'm saying that because this makes it a very, very big curse to happen, right? So they said, if this woman has been cheating on her husband and she drinks this, it's going to be a curse to her and she's not going to be able to have children. However, if she has not and she drinks of this, then she will be fine and she will be able to bear children. And so that's a curse that was unfortunately placed on women that stepped out of their marriage for any reason whatsoever. So in verse 29, it says, "This then is the law of jealousy." So it's a law of jealousy. It's kind of a water of jealousy. It's the law of jealousy when a woman goes astray and makes herself impure while married to her husband, or when feelings of jealousy come over a man because he suspects his wife. The priest is to have her stand before the Lord and to apply this entire law to her. The husband will be innocent of any wrongdoing, but the woman will bear the consequences of her sin. That's where we finish today. I feel like it's not the best place to finish, but that's where we finish today. It is what it is. And again, it's one of those things that being a woman of this generation, hard to read, hard to process, hard to work through. I think it's not because God deems us any less than. I think it's because my own queenship sort of feels a certain way, and this offends my sensibilities a little bit. So, it's one of those things where you just need to take time and trust that God is who He says He is, and so He does things to keep the people holy and to keep them from sinning and from hurting each other, and sort of a collective people. That's really His. That's from what I've seen coming up to this. That seems to be His whole goal, is to keep His people as holy as possible. And so these things are put in place to safeguard that. So we are ending today on that note, and I'm hoping tomorrow we don't talk so much about that, maybe a little bit less about women, and maybe going into a little bit of a different direction. So we'll see. Tomorrow we're moving on in Numbers, and actually, that's actually not true. Tomorrow is leap year day. So tomorrow for me is February 29th. For you guys listening, the day it pops up will be February 29th. And so I'm going to be just sort of doing some wrap ups and maybe a little bit of, where we've been, where we're going, maybe getting a little bit of, hopefully a little bit of comments of how you guys feel up to this point. So if you like this, hit the like button, share it with other people, as many as possible, subscribe to the channel so it will come up for you every day, and keep reading. I'll see you tomorrow.